Hey, what's up, guys? Happy New Year. This is Chris Bell coming to you from Scale Speed Garage, the #1 resource for model car and truck 3D printing online. Just wanted to bring you a quick video today. Looking forward to 2022 and what it holds for resin 3D printing. So I'm bringing you here my top 3 2022 3D printing predictions for resin 3D printing, and one wish as well. 2021 was a pretty big year for resin 3D printing. We saw a lot of launches like the Elegoo Mars 3, the Anycubic Photon Mono X 6K, which looks like has been delayed a little bit, but was launched and announced in 2021, as well as the Frozen Sonic Mini 8K, another one that is seems to be a little slow to be getting shipped out, but a lot of big printers were launched in 2021, and we also saw the announcement of a lot of new real large format printers coming out, like the 12.8-inch Elegoo Jupiter and the Frozen Sonic Mega 8K, which is going to clock in for printing duty with an absolutely gargantuan 15-inch screen. So there's a lot of excitement around those coming out. And while 2021 saw a lot of the manufacturers racing towards ever higher resolutions and larger print sizes, I think we're going to see those trends continue into maybe the first half of 2022. But I think as 2022 moves along, we are going to start to see a fundamental shift in where these manufacturers are focusing their development energy. And here's how. My first prediction for 2022 is that DLP, digital light projection technology, is going to be slow to grow. At this point, most printers, most consumer grade 3D printers have been the masked SLA type technology that we're all used to, with the LCD screen and the UV light source beneath it. And by contrast, DLP, or digital light projection technology printers, use a digital image projector, the same kind of projector that you would use to project a movie on a screen at home or in your home theater or whatever. The same kind of technology uses that projection and mirrors to focus images of UV light onto the FEP film and the curing surface of the part. And DLP technology has existed for some time. We've seen some more specialty printers use it, like the Solus Pro, for example. Some very high-end jewelry making and dental printers have used this technology. But largely, this technology so far has only really existed on the real high-dollar commercial machines. But Anycubic's Photon Ultra that is coming out in the early part of 2022 is seeking to change that. It's Kickstarter priced as low as $399. It's going to retail about $599. And that Photon Ultra is going to be the first printer to bring DLP technology onto the workbench of most home hobbyist users. According to Anycubic's Kickstarter, this DLP technology promises to make 3D printers faster, more accurate across the entire surface of the build plate, more energy efficient, and require less maintenance by eliminating the consumable LCD screen. And so while the benefits of DLP printers certainly seem impressive, I don't think 2022 is going to be their year. The chips that are used for the light projection itself are currently really only made by 2 companies, Texas Instruments and Sony, and those chips are still quite expensive. And so I think it's going to be some time before we see that technology really reach the kind of mainstream where it can be accessible and affordable for the home user. Prediction number 2 is that I think that the major manufacturers of the resin 3D printers in 2022 are going to shift their development away from ever increasing size and resolution. And, here's why. It wasn't too long ago that 2K printers were considered like the top consumer grade resin printers you could get. And then in just a couple of short years, we've seen 2K go to 4K, then 5K and 6K, and now there are 8K printers coming out. The Frozen Sonic Mini 8K offers an astonishing pixel resolution of just 22 microns, 0.022 millimeters. And that'll give truly incredible detail and almost invisible layer lines on most curved surfaces. So surely the race for ever higher resolutions will continue full speed ahead, right? My guess is no. And here's why. In a world where manufacturers have been locked into this race for ever higher resolutions, why would they stop focusing so heavily on resolution? The answer to me is simply this. It's one of diminishing returns. As the resolution is quickly reaching this point where any further advancements or increases in printer resolution are going to get to the point where they just will be indistinguishable to the naked eye. And then printer size is another area where I think we're quickly approaching a limit for what's going to be practical for the home hobby user. The newest, largest printers that are coming out offer a ton of capability for the hobbyist user, but we're really kind of running up against practical limitations insofar as the resin capacity, the sheer amount of resin that a lot of these printers will take, as well as things like FEP film capabilities, and just the physical printer size. We're reaching a point where, if the printers get much bigger, they're simply just going to outgrow the space that most hobbyist level users have for 3D printing. So in a market where resolution and printer size are effectively maxed out, what's going to be the next frontier for the printer manufacturers? For this, I see kind of two areas that I think will be the next areas of focus for the printer manufacturers. One is going to be printing speed, and the other is going to be post-processing. And with resolution and size maxed out, I think 2022 is going to be the year where we really start seeing the manufacturers competing instead on print speed. How quickly can you churn out these really high quality, impressive, highly detailed prints? And obviously we have seen a ton of advancement already with the shift away from RGB screens to monochromatic screens, but I think we're going to still see even further improvement on printing speed yet. And then in addition, I think that the post-processing of resin printing is still a turnoff for a lot of prospective buyers of 3D printers. I think a lot of people see the mess and the fumes and the extra work that's involved in cleaning prints and removing supports, and they kind of see all those factors as a barrier for entry. So I think a lot of the printer manufacturers are going to start looking at ways to make the process of resin printing more accessible for the average hobbyist. And those two factors lead to what I think is going to be my third prediction. I think the next big thing for 2022, and that is top-down printing. That's resin printing that happens opposite to how the current masked SLA and other SLA type and DLP type printers operate. And this technology was once the realm exclusively of big industrial printers that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. But I think that top-down printing really has the potential to revolutionize the hobby resin 3D printing market. And here's why. So top-down 3D printing, as the name implies, operates exactly opposite from your standard MSLA printer, like your Elegoo Saturn, your Anycubic Photon, your Sonic Mini, what have you. On a top-down printer, The build plate sits at the bottom of the build area and faces up, and the UV image that's used to cure the resin is projected down from the top of the machine instead of vice versa. And in a top-down machine, the build plate starts level with the surface of the resin and then sinks down further into the resin vat as the print progresses. So top-down resin printing offers a multitude of advantages over traditional MSLA 3D printing. And some of those advantages include there's no FEP film. Because the printing takes place right side up, there's no need for any sort of release film, any sort of FEP film or NFEP film. The layer of resin that's getting cured is on the top of the part, not on the bottom of the part. So not only does that save on maintenance time and costs, we don't have FEP films that we have to replace and tune and everything else, but it also offers a huge advantage for the prints themselves. And that advantage comes from the fact that without a FEP film, there are no peel or suction forces that are acting on that part. On a traditional MSLA printer, every lift of the build plate puts strain on the parts that we're printing as it peels them away from the FEP film. And that makes printing very thin parts very tricky. You have to use a lot of supports, and you really risk breaking or tearing a lot of these real fine areas of prints because of these peel forces. And so on a top-down printer, we don't have those forces being exerted on the part. And so it makes the printing of a lot of these real fine details much more practical. Another great advantage of top-down printing is that it reduces the amount of supports that we need. In many cases, it can even eliminate the need for supports altogether because we're printing the part right side up instead of upside down. And so, this is awesome for making the surface of prints cleaner, reducing post-processing, all of that. I think this is a big win all around. Another huge game changer of top-down printing is the ability for printing to become continuous, because there's no need to peel a part away from a FEP film anymore. Top-down printers can just print continuously. So instead of printing hundreds or thousands of separate individual layers, top-down printers can just kind of continuously move the build plate while continuously changing the image. So if you think of like the image being projected that's curing the resin is now like a movie instead of a stack of photographs. But I think that this feature has the ability to eliminate layer lines almost completely, if not completely, which should improve the surface quality of the prints, but also because we're not printing in individual discrete layers anymore. Continuous top-down printing now gives us the ability to print truly clear parts, which I think is awesome. And for model car printing especially, that gives us the ability to really up our game in terms of printing things like windows, headlight lenses, that sort of thing. The kinds of things that MSLA traditional resin printers just simply can't do. And then print speed is a huge one with the top-down printing. And this is why I think it's going to become such a focus for more manufacturers towards the second half of 2022. And there are three factors that make top-down resin printing significantly faster than MSLA printing. The first one is that the build plate is only moving in one direction. Because the print doesn't have to peel away from a FEP film and allow new resin to flow under the part, a top-down printer only moves the print downward, the build plate downward during printing. Whereas on a traditional MSLA printer, that build plate has to move up and down. So an example, if your print settings are configured with a 0.03 millimeter layer height, and a lift height of 6 millimeters, between every layer of that print, your build plate has to travel upward by 6 millimeters, and then back down again by 5.97 millimeters to be in place for the next layer. And then you may have to factor in light off delays and everything else. And it just adds up to a whole lot of extra time. Also, because we're not fighting any peel forces or gravity, we can move the build plate a lot faster. On a traditional MSLA printer, we oftentimes have to slow our lift speeds down simply to prevent the peel forces or the suction forces or gravity from wreaking havoc on the part that we're printing. And so that's another reason that top-down printing is going to improve print speed. And then again, obviously, just the fact that it's printing continuously and not in individual discrete layers is also going to improve the print speed quite significantly with top-down printing. So how much faster is top-down printing? Well, there's a Chinese company right now that has a Kickstarter for the first consumer grade top-down continuous 3D resin printer, company called Hitri or Hitri. They've announced their printer, the Rocket One, and they're claiming print speeds that are 20 to 60 times faster than a traditional MSLA printer. In fact, they're claiming that their Rocket One printer can achieve print speeds of up to 380 millimeters per hour. That's almost 15 inches of printing in an hour. So with such incredible print speeds, easier post-processing, no layer lines, the ability to print totally clear parts, I think that top-down resin printing just seems like a truly revolutionary technology. And I think that the Rocket One Kickstarter is just the beginning. And I do predict that top-down will be the future of resin printing. So for 2022, I would expect at least one of the other big manufacturers to get in on the top-down game. And if I had to bet which one, my money would be on Anycubic. After all, Frozen is still in catch-up mode on trying to get their Sonic Mini 8K orders fulfilled. Elegoo's going to be tied up building and shipping the pre-ordered Jupiter units. On the other hand, Anycubic already has the DLP technology that they're putting into the Photon Ultra, and that's exactly the type of image projection that would be ideal for top-down printing. So do be on the lookout for new top-down continuous resin printers coming sometime in 2022. And then I'm going to leave you guys with just one wish that I have for the resin printing world for 2022. And that wish is that we'll see some form of a true open source architecture for resin 3D printing. Earlier in 2021, Qidu Systems, the company that makes Qidu Box and makes the motherboards for many of the most common resin 3D printers, they caused quite a panic by announcing that most of those printers running Qidu boards were going to be locked only to Qidu Box for slicing. Not only did this alienate devotees of Lychee and other slicers, but more importantly, it really sparked a lot of concerns about the future of free slicing software and led to worries that Qidu Systems would essentially take up a monopoly on the resin printing market and force users into upgrading to paid versions of their software. And while Qidu Systems eventually walked back that line and stated that they would make their development code available to other companies, the whole debacle really just highlighted how little true choice exists in this young resin 3D printing market. After all, the printers from all of the major manufacturers use hardware developed by Qidu Systems. And as it stands now, the home hobbyist resin 3D printing market is a de facto monopoly, leaving all of the power in Qidu's hands. And I feel that without vigorous competition in the market, Qidu Systems has little impetus to continue improving their products, both on the hardware and the software side. The good news is that we've seen some enterprising individuals and startups set out to develop an open source environment for resin 3D printing, which could help to stabilize the market and prevent hobbyists from bearing the brunt of one company just throwing around its will, or even worse yet, just deciding that it doesn't need to improve its products at all. And so instead of developing a lot of these new chipsets and circuit boards from the ground up, it seems like a lot of these open source approaches to resin 3D printing are taking place using other open source hardware, things like microcomputers such as Raspberry Pi or Arduino, for example. And so my wish for 2022 is that we see a truly viable and accessible open source printing architecture that makes a big enough presence in the market to at least put Qidoo Systems on notice that ours is a community of makers and problem solvers who aren't just going to idly sit by and accept bad products or bad business. Anyways, guys, those are my 3 resin printing predictions for 2022 and my one wish. If you are a model car or truck builder and you are looking to add 3D printing to your model builds, come check us out over at www.scalespeedgarage.com. We are the #1 resource online for all things model car 3D printing related. We'll see you guys there. Until then, happy modeling and keep building your dreams.